It was in 1999, the year of our Lord, when the House of Lords was debating the House of Lords Act, when a shriek and murmur echoed from the gallery. One Charles Beauclerk, heir to the century-old lineage of the Duke of St Albans, descended therefore from Charles II, exclaimed, "This bill, drafted in Brussels, is treason. What we are witnessing is the abolition of Britain. Before us lies the wasteland. No queen, no culture, no sovereignty, no freedom. Stand up for your queen and country and vote this bill down." The bill was not voted down, and it restricted the voting rights of hereditary peers, leaving only 92 of them in the House of Lords. But Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has reportedly got plans to axe the hereditary peers altogether, finishing the work of his mentor Tony Blair and throwing tradition into the dustbin of history. Well, joining me now is Lord Strathclyde. Tom, thank you very much for joining me. Do you think the remaining 92 hereditaries are still justifiable?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be on your show, Jacob. Thank you for inviting me along. I mean, this story that's emanated this weekend about Labour Party policy, I mean, it just takes us straight back to 1998, when the Labour Party promised us long-term reform of the second chamber. And what Sir Keir Starmer is saying now, he hasn't done any thinking, or none of his people have done any thinking at all about things like the size of the House, the age limits, term limits, the House of Lords Appointments Commission, or any of the other things that need to be done. And that's why this announcement is so incredibly disappointing, because it creates an appointed chamber entirely in the hands of whoever is Prime Minister.
And you were a very distinguished leader of the House of Lords, and the government had a good track record of getting business through when you were in charge. Do you think the Lords has changed since 1999 and become more political, or is it working quite well as it is?
Both of those. I do think that the House of Lords has become far more assertive, partly because people believe their own propaganda, that they are somehow there on merit and they're there to do a particular job. But generally speaking, the House of Lords does the job that it is asked to do. It scrutinizes and revises legislation. It debates the great issues of the day and does them all extremely effectively. So if there's going to be a change, it should be on a cross-party basis. This is an important House of Parliament. There should be consultations, there should be committees meeting to decide how it should be done, in the same way that David Cameron and Nick Clegg did in the reforms that they tried to bring through in 2012. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done, and that should take priority rather than simply using the sledgehammer of removing the hereditary peers.
And do you think the hereditary peers are still making a contribution? Now they're down to 92, that the ones involved are inevitably the ones who are more interested in contributing to the work of the Lords?
Well, you're quite right. I mean, most of the hereditary peers who are now in the House of Lords want to be there, are actively involved in the work of the chamber. Within the Conservative Party, there are many who act as ministers or in the whip's office, are involved as sort of politically active in the work of the House of Lords. And that's true as well in the crossbenchers. So there's no chance of the hereditary peers not playing a part in the House of Lords. They are very active and they contribute a great deal.
And more of them are Tory than Labour, inevitably, I suppose. So it would be quite a reduction if they were just removed in the Tory representation in the Lords.
Well, of course, that is Labour's old game. In 1998, they removed over a third of the Conservative Party and simply replaced them with their own people. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. Again, there are about 45 hereditary peers in the Conservative Party in the House of Lords. If they got rid of them, you can be absolutely sure that they wouldn't be replaced if they form a government at the next general election.
But do you think the hereditary principle remains justifiable in the more democratic world that we live in? I mean, it was marvellous in the 18th century when we had rotten boroughs and all those sorts of things. But is it justifiable now?
Absolutely not. Nobody is making the case to defend heredity in our modern polity. What we are saying, what we should all be interested in, is to make sure that we have a second chamber that works effectively and looks and doesn't simply allow itself to be decided upon by the Prime Minister on his or her whim. We need something better. That's why we need to look at the Appointments Commission. We need to look at the age, and we need to look at all the other faults.
Well, Lord Strathclyde, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Still with me is my panel, Jerry Hayes and Bill Rammell. Bill, this is basically Labour's given up on proper reform of the House of Lords, just kick out a few Tories and fiddle the system.
Well, I don't know what's going to be in the manifesto, and this is one story in the Financial Times. However, if, when we come to power, part of the reform package is to remove the hereditaries, I would welcome that. You know, we rightly removed over 600 of them in 1998. It is indefensible that people sit in our Houses of Parliament simply on the basis of the family they were born into.
But 1911 Parliament Act says it's a temporary measure until a more democratic means of having an upper chamber is found. 1999, the Labour Party says that it's going to be a temporary measure until you've worked out the final reform. This then never happens, so you just hack away and remove the odd Tory.
No, there would have to be balance. And one of the things that I think we need is a balancing mechanism so that you don't have a disproportionate benefit politically to one party. And frankly, historically, that benefit has been to the Conservative Party. But the other bit in this mix, and who knows what the Labour manifesto will end up saying, is are we going to have an elected House of Lords? And I actually think that would be a massively retrograde step, because you would inevitably create massive tension between an elected House of Commons and an elected House of Lords. And I don't think that is the way forward.
And Jerry, the 92 were left essentially as a card to say there must be proper reform to complete this process. If they're removed, basically everyone's given up on proper reform, haven't they? Because the House of Commons won't...
I think everyone's given up on proper reform. Every member of Parliament, I suspect you as well. If you ever lost your seat, which I hope you don't, you'd be crawling on your hands and knees to get into the House of Lords. They all do, because they feel they have to serve the country. But look at Tommy Strathclyde, sorry. Good man. He personifies everything we need in the House of Lords. It works. If you had a blank sheet of paper, you wouldn't have it. What's wrong with the hereditary?
And Tom was an hereditary.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Well, he is.
He may have got I can't remember if he got a life peerage or not, because he's been leader of the House for so long and all that.
But all a bit weird. But most of the hereditaries have little things tucked,
But he's worked incredibly hard, delivered an enormous amount for his country, done his service.
Good people, Robin Ferrers, great people. Why stop them? They care. And what's the benefit of the House of Lords? It's a reviewing chamber. It's the chamber which tries to clear up the mess that you guys have made in the House of Commons.
Bill's point about an elected House, no member of the House of Commons ever wants an elected House of Lords, because it would be like the US. We'd get gridlock, and it would be a challenge to the lower house.
And then the whips would have a real say, and that is wrong. We've got a chamber which actually works. Leave it alone.
But I tell you the other reason why I'm not in favour of wholesale reform. It would suck the life out of the first term of a Labour government.
Of course it will be.
There'd be massive debates, massive disputes, MPs with vested interests who don't want to see wholesale reform. I remember 1998, and there were about 7 or 8 different propositions. And tactically, every one of them was voted down because people didn't want a solution.
I looked up when the coalition had its reform of the House of Lords, what Michael Foot and Enoch Powell had done.
Exactly, 1969.
I'd looked up all their speeches. I was ready to go through that all over again.
Absolutely right.
Yes,
it works. Leave it alone. It's an aspiration. It'll be in your manifesto.
But keep the 92?
Yeah.
Keep the 92. Go on.
Why get rid of them?
We were almost getting Easter agreement, but thank you to my panel.